What's going on, everybody? This is your guys, Eris and Lenjo. I know it's been a minute.
No time, my boy.
Oh man, it's been a long time. Life been lifing, you know what I'm saying?
Man, what?
But we are here. Welcome to the LA Report. This is season 3, episode 1. And we can't even lie, a juicy topic kind of brought us out of retirement, even though it wasn't a formal one. But we are back. Today we're going to be discussing the Deion Sanders to leaving Jackson State and headed to Colorado. This is going to be a fire episode. We got some strong opinions, and following this episode, we're actually going to do a live so we can kind of engage with you all to kind of get your feel on how you feel about this and have some fun with this. So without further ado, let's get it in.
Let's get
So,
it
Doug,
in, man. It's good to be back in the podcast space. I got my mic up, set up, and everything, man. But to talk about Deion Sanders, man, congrats to him. That's first and foremost. Congrats to Deion Sanders for getting the job at Colorado, because for a long time we've been saying how Power 5 conferences don't hire black coaches, and we finally got a black coach that has an opportunity to make some noise and to really get his foot into the game in regards to the BCS format and Pac-12 conference. So congrats to him, number one. Number two, I think it's unfortunate, man, that people have been calling him a sellout, bashing him, saying that he left HBCUs to dry. And I say unfortunate because when I hear folks express that, it just sounds to me like pure ignorance. And I say that respectfully because a lot of folks that champion for HBCUs, and in particular HBCU athletics, don't really have knowledge on how college athletics works. You feel what I'm saying? We can deep dive into that after that, but I want to say that I am on Deion's side with this choice. I think Deion made the right choice. He made a good choice, and he did a great job with Jackson State and Jackson, Mississippi, and HBCU as a whole. So I think I salute him, and I wish him the best moving forward.
Absolutely, man. And so let's take a step back here. So pretty much, with us doing this episode, it is obviously not just about congratulating Deion on his move to Colorado. Pretty much, we want to talk about obviously the backlash that he's received for his move from Jackson State and HBCU to a now Power 5 PWI. And obviously, as Lenjo kind of just discussed, the backlash has been so severe as it pertains to him being a sellout and him leaving or aborting the mission that he claimed or that he stated when he first got there, as far as putting HBCUs back on the map. And so this conversation is, I'm pretty sure by the time this episode airs, you guys would have heard a variety of different viewpoints, but we just wanted to hop on here and kind of give you our perspectives. And we want, at Lenjo is a HBC, both of us are HBCU graduates, but Lenjo is an HBCU athlete 2 times over, both at the University of District of Columbia and Savannah State University. So he has an intimate knowledge on kind of the background of college athletics at the HBCU level, and the understanding of the intricacies that some of you may not understand. And hopefully he can shed some light on and provide some context for you. So when we do engage with you all with the live, it'll be a lot more of a educational dialogue is the hope for that. But with that being said, I definitely agree. We've had this conversation off air, and I agree with you 100%. I think Deion Sanders, first of all, did what he came to Jackson State to do. I think that his goal, his aim was to put HBCUs back on the map. And while I've actually had some time to gather and listen to some very interesting points that kind of rebuke to some extent what his impact on HBCUs were, I do think that what he did ultimately was use and leverage his brand. You know, most folks out there probably don't realize, but if you don't know who Deion Sanders is, it is just based upon what he did at Jackson State. He is probably and arguably one of the top 5 to 10, I would probably say top 5 football players to ever play in the NFL. Definitely a top 2 to 3 defensive player to ever play the game. And obviously his brand is what has been so powerful over the years. And so him going to Jackson State in the first place was a tremendous accomplishment for HBCUs and for himself, you know. And so like it is unfortunate to see the backlash that he's received because of the move. And I kind of want to get into it, you know, ask you, we could bounce some questions off each other, bro. And just kind of see, like, first off, what is your viewpoint on folks that are saying that his impact on the HBCU level was at this point tainted because of his move to Colorado, basically saying that he not just he was being selfish in his approach to leave the HBCUs, and that he left kind of like essentially left black folks hanging.
Okay. That's actually a very nuanced question, but I'll try to answer it the best I can. Number one, Deion did not leave HBCUs. Deion left Jackson State. Let's be clear about that. HBCUs have plenty of coaches, plenty of former pros that are coaches now. So putting all of this HBCU movement on one person is very unfair. That's number one. Number two, you know, I've heard the argument that, you know, he left too early before things really got started, da 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 da. And that right there is fallacy number one. Every college coach is on a time schedule. That's why you have contracts. We have years on them, right? And the years get extended as you win. So if Deion Sanders was not successful in terms of getting these 2 back-to-back SWAC championships, et cetera, let's say Deion Sanders had a losing season for the past 2 years, he probably got fired. And we wouldn't be saying this about him. That's number one. So we have to understand that college athletics, there is no forever or infinite time frame. Every college coach is on a tight schedule contract to make something happen. That's number one. I mean, that's number two. Number three, and I think is probably most important, is that if we think that the HBCU movement or the advancement of HBCU stops with Deion Sanders or started with Deion Sanders, and then we have already have no concept of how we advance ourselves, I think is the onus has to be more on the institutions to prioritize athletics versus we got to get a star former pro to come in and coach for us. Because if we're being honest, that's not replicable. Every HBCU, I'm sorry, it's making it even more narrow. Every D1 HBCU cannot hire a former pro athlete because there's not many out there coaching. That's number one. You feel what I'm saying? So the onus has to be on the institutions to prioritize their athletics. That's number one. Improve facilities, allow more funds for better recruiting, so we can get more talented players to come into our schools, and then we can rise up the level of HBCU sports, and then we can go to these TV companies like ESPN, CBS, et cetera, and have these deals, because that's where all these conferences like the Big Ten, the ACC, Big East, Pac-12 make their money, is through the TV deals. It's not through the revenue that having a 5-star athlete or having a 5-star coach can come in and bring. When you raise the attention or broaden the attention to how we can improve every HBCU as a whole, it has to be, the onus has to be on the schools to prioritize that, because once your athletics is good, your attendance goes up, your retention goes up, and then that's when you get people to come in paying more with their tuition, et cetera, and then you can improve the other landscapes of your individual schools. But for us to blame Deion Sanders and say, oh, he came in, he took advantage of us, and he left is foolishness, because if he wasn't doing good, he would have got fired anyway, right? So it's not a case of that. And then also, we don't look at any other coach that has left HBCUs went on to a PWI and bash them. We don't look at HBCU athletes that leave PWIs and bash them. So why are we going to bash Deion Sanders? It kind of comes off as hypocritical, but again, it's rooted in ignorance in the sense that we don't understand how college athletics really works. We live in a results-based society. If you go to any place and don't produce, you're out of there. And then when you go to a place and you produce, you have more options to move on somewhere else. So I think Deion doing what he did at Jackson State and then taking himself to a Power 5 conference and taking his staff with him was a great thing. And I think people should take a step back, look at the facts, and then make a choice. Don't just go off your emotion and say, "Oh, HBCUs are now in the back burner," all that stuff. To me, it's wild. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so just to again give the edge, because we both agree on a lot of this topic as far as what it means for HBCUs and Deion's impact, as far as the positive impact that he leveraged to HBCUs and to Jackson State. I think that it's important to note that, like, to your biggest point, the reality that some people thought that Deion was going to serve, and he actually did serve. He served as a catalyst, but not every catalyst is going to be a mainstay. And never did Deion ever say that he was planning to stay long term at Jackson State. He's always had ambitions to coach at a FBS school. For those of you who don't know what FBS means, it's just a Power 5 school, meaning that the difference between HBCU athletes, specifically in football and in as far as HBCU athletes and Power 5 schools, is mainly just the competition as far as the offensive and defensive lines of the particular players that they're able to gain. Because skill position wise, HBCU athletes can compete with D1 athletes. This is really just talking about football at this particular juncture. So you're talking about the lines of scrimmage, if you will, and obviously HBCU guys are a little bit smaller. they're not getting the cream of the crop, the guys that go to Alabama that's going to the NFL and things of that nature. So Deion has always had a goal in mind to be able to compete at the highest level, and unfortunately, just through HBCUs. Now, granted, I think it's important to note that Jackson State, while Deion chose Jackson State, it's almost like Jackson State gave him an opportunity as well, but they were foolish. They would be foolish not to have given him an opportunity. Again, Deion Sanders is not just a name; he's a brand, and his brand is what was able to serve so many of the university. People don't realize that he actually took some of his salary that they guaranteed him to help improve facilities at Jackson State as far as a place so that they can actually have an adequate place to train. But I want to kind of, because me and you agree on this, bro, I want to make sure that I don't, like, again, I want to kind of give the other side so we can kind of address these points. And again, check us out with our live that we're going to be doing. We're going to definitely kind of figure that time out and date, but you'll see it on the page as well. A lot of folks are not, they're saying not just that Deion has sold them out, because their thing was that Deion claimed that this was going to be a movement for HBCUs, and that as a collective, HBCUs was going to have a raised level of financial benefit to his presence and just what he was trying to create there. So folks are like, well, Deion, some folks feel like Deion came in and claimed to be the savior for HBCUs, and that by him leaving now, that is all gone. There's no one else to pick up the baton, if you will. Like, to those folks that feel that way, you say what exactly to the fact that the baton he basically dropped the baton to no one at this point?
And I hate to say this, bro. I really do, because we love our HBCUs, and we love HBCUs in general, and we love the people that we met, the professors that we met. But I hate to say this because it's really like a white supremacist kind of sick mentality where we think that there has to be a knight in shining armor to come and save us and to take us to this quote unquote promised land, when when it's actually in the reverse. If we were to all come in and say, you know what, we're going to move in this direction and we're not going to waver on that, then things would happen and probably faster than what they did for Deion Sanders. So, to the point of Deion came and passed the baton off to no one. It's not a job. There really shouldn't be a baton to pass because there are strength in numbers. We can't just have one person or one HBCU be up here and the rest of them are down here, right? And I also want to point to a great example, the CIAA, D2 athletics, but it's still HBCU sports. Look at the brand that they have created. They have created a weekend, the CIAA weekend, that was probably one of the more profitable postseason tournaments amongst HBCUs. Why? Because all the schools came in together and said, you know what, we're going to control this hub and make this hub as profitable as we can. And as people had no idea about sports, or traveling to Charlotte or traveling to Baltimore to go see things play. And I think that other HBCUs can copy that model. So in case a guy like a Deion Sanders comes or someone big name comes and they decide to leave, the brand is still viable. You feel what I'm saying? So there shouldn't be a baton to pass off to anyone. It's okay. Deion came to this thing. He rolled out. Cool. Let's do it again. That's the whole thing about having a program where even if someone leaves, the program is still going to be exactly what it is. You look at the models of Duke, Syracuse, Georgetown, Maryland, Seton Hall, etc. Coaches leave all the time. Coaches come in, and the schools are still good. Why? Because they have established a foundation and a program that is replicable and that can be repeatable throughout time. And I think HBCUs oftentimes fail to grasp that concept that we don't need as a superstar head coach. We just need to increase our brand as a whole. And then we can move forward no matter who we have, no matter who is the star name, no matter what, we're still going to be a respectable and a profitable brand. And I think until we get to that point, it's going to be hard for us to get to where we want to in our minds. And we're always going to be searching for this knight in shining armor when really we have the power right here amongst ourselves. So that's what's going to take in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that for the folks out there listening, I think that I understand that you all felt that Deion owed it to HBCUs to kind of stay because of what you felt like he kind of led his premise to joining Jackson State meant. But I will say, to like Linjo's point, we as a community of people, we gotta get past the point where we have expectations or we place expectations onto the shoulders of an individual that they have not consented to. Deion said that he wanted to come and restore relevancy to HBCUs. And while HBCUs athletics have always been relevant, specifically the Bayou Classic, which is currently on, I think, every year that's been on television for a while. HBCUs as a whole, the collective awareness around them, Deion gave more of a light towards because of who his brand was. And I think that what's upsetting most folks is the fact that such a high level brand of an individual has left an HBCU to go to a Power 5 school. Now, him going to a Power 5 school again at Colorado, people have to understand that is a move in which you make for your coaching career and your career as an individual. And people will say, well, he sold us on HBCUs being so important. I think that the other aspect to talk about is the sad mentality that we have to where we think that it's unrealistic to think that Deion might have left someone on his staff in place or recommended someone who he views could still lead Jackson State and other HBCUs to a place of relevancy because he left a blueprint. And if he left somebody who he recommended, one would also argue that they might be able to leverage some of the resources that Deion did. Now, again, we can't expect the name brand power of Deion to just reverberate throughout HBCUs. That's an unrealistic expectation. I think we have to understand that as a people, to Lenjo's point, it takes a collective, and that each of us in our own day-to-day lives would take opportunities to better ourselves and to challenge ourselves. And just because we are not within our own group of community, HBCUs have been around before Deion came to Jackson State. They're going to be around well after Deion, in terms of, since he's already left Jackson State, they're going to be around forever. The goal, though, is how do we, the questions are, how do we, not just HBCU athletics, but how do we continue to make sure HBCUs are thriving? And that issue we can't lay at the feet of any one man or woman. You know what I'm saying? That's a collective issue that honestly has been going on since before Deion, and before, hell, before us, before any of these conversations. This has been a chronic issue. So the message that Deion Sanders, and I think it's nasty business for us to call him a sellout.
Nasty, nasty as fuck.
There are a lot of folks that are that we could consider to be sellouts, but a person who you disagree with their position to do what they do, I think is a dangerous thing to call them a sellout. And I think that, again, there's so many layers to this conversation. I want to kind of deviate that, because I feel like like I said, we're on the same page. I wanted to kind of just touch on some of the arguments against him moving, but I wanted to talk about more so now just college athletics, being an HBCU athlete, what you feel like as being as have been a HBCU athlete, the differences, and why you would think a coach and or a player would prefer to go to a Power 5 school. And in this case, we have to remember, as folks, that as we're upset about Deion, a lot of our Black athletes, student athletes, they go to these Power 5 schools because of the facilities and things of that nature that Linjo's about to touch on. But the opportunity to play at the next level is also greater because of the competition, and just proverbially, I would assume, just the respect level that they have for those institutions or on that level. So if you could speak to like your experience as an HBCU athlete, and kind of like, I guess, if you could have, would you have gone to a PWI, Power 5 school, if given like certain opportunities? And maybe you did have those opportunities.
If I had the opportunity, well, I did have the opportunity after my third year at UDC. I got hurt, but the schools that offered me, they wanted to see me work out, but I was like 4 months post surgery, so I couldn't work out the way they wanted me, so the way I wanted to. So they pulled their scholarships, and that's when Savannah State decided to stay and work with me, which is why I ended up going there, and I'm forever grateful to them for that. But the reason why athletes choose PWIs over HBCUs, aside from the facilities and the opportunities, let's put that aside. Let's look at the real facts. There are simply just more PWIs than there are HBCUs. Period. There are there's a higher percentage, let's say this, for Black college students across the country, for students that are eligible for to go to college that are Black. I want to say like 53% of us, us, go to PWIs, and like 7 to 10% go to HBCUs. Why? Because there's a greater number of PWI institutions. So off the rip, HBCUs are going to be at a disadvantage in regards to athletes choosing to go there versus PWI. So that's not even like, think about the opportunity set. It's like the numbers just speak to, there's more availability with PWIs than there are with HBCUs. That's the largest point. Now back to opportunities, right? PWIs, yes, they offer a different level of exposure and opportunity to then go to the next level, and that is whether you're trying to go the NBA, NFL, or go overseas, G League, whatever the case is. Going to a PWI can offer, more opportunities. Speaking in general terms, of course, there are levels in this, and the bottom line is you have to perform. Just because you go to a PWI doesn't mean you're guaranteed to go to NBA. If you don't play well, then you're not going to, it doesn't make any difference. So whether you go to HBCU or PWI, the bottom line is you have to perform. So I think that the reason why athletes go to more PWIs than the HBCUs has more to do with the availability of PWIs than the actual opportunities that they provide. Now, you want to have a convo about five-star athletes, that might be a bit different because the idea is that a five-star athlete is a top 25 kid in the country, and they're projected to be in the NBA within eight to 9 months. So if you're a parent and you have a kid, you're a child, you come up through these adverse situations like most of these Black kids do, you have an opportunity to change your dynamic of your life and your family's lives in an instant. It makes sense, logical sense, to go to a PWI because you've seen that product and that blueprint repeatable every single year. Go look at the top 10 pick in the draft for the last 10 years or 30 years and see the schools they came from. Go look at the projected next year's draft and see the schools that these kids are coming from. So you're a kid coming up and you see that, and you see your family struggling. Why would you deviate that for the sake of, oh, HBCUs? It's very noble. It's great. But can your family eat off that? No. So I don't put the fault on the five-star kid or the kid decides to go to PWI because they feel like they have an opportunity. That's totally fine in my opinion. I think what has to happen again is that HBCUs have to improve their brand of basketball or improve their brand of sports or athletics in general, so that when a kid considers them, it's not a seesaw decision. It's like, okay, I can go here and have the same result versus I can go here and I might not even get considered if I go there. So that again falls on these institutions because, you know, winning sells, production sells, and no one wants to see Howard smash Dell State by 40. No one wants to see that. Just saying, no one wants to see Hampton smash, Bluefield State by 60. No one see that. So when we improve our brand of basketball as a whole, then we can get to higher levels. And my final point to that piece is HBCUs, we can't wait until a kid is labeled as a five-star before we start to recruit them. By that point, it's too late. We cannot wait for the quote-unquote white man to say, hey, this kid's a five-star, for us to say, okay, he's worth coming here. No. We got to get involved in the game early when they're 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, before they hit the scene like that, get involved in their recruitment early. But that also, again, falls on HBCUs to prioritize sports in their budgets. We need to prioritize our recruiting budget so these people can go get these kids earlier in the game and increase the probability of them coming to our schools. And then we can go from there. We can't wait until a kid is at 5-star, 9 months away from making $20 million in 2 minutes to say, hey, don't go there, come here. And then also we have to provide an incentive for these kids. We can't just say, hey, don't make money for the white man, make money for us and give them and treat them the exact same way. We got to invite them and give them an incentive as to why they should come to HBCU, aside from just the pride piece and the emotional piece. Let's say, hey, you come to our school, if you decide to stay for a year, 2 years, you can always come back and finish for free. Or you can say, hey, if you come here, you stay for 2 years or stay all 4 years, your kids can come here for free. If we can start offering those kind of incentives to these kids or these athletes, then we can see the trend change. But until then, we can't just keep pointing the finger. You feel what I'm saying? So yeah.
So, and I appreciate that perspective, and hopefully to you all out there that's listening, this resonates with you in terms of coming from a HBCU athlete and his perspective on why one would choose a PWI in certain situations. Because the next part of what I want to touch on is there are folks out there who are also upset at Deion because they are saying that he tricked kids into coming to Jackson State, and now that he's leaving, those kids are stuck at Jackson State. And I want to shed some light on that because, again, this aspect is going to be a little bit different because what we're also looking at is there's something that they call the transfer portal now, which allows kids to be able to transfer and go play at other colleges and universities right away. It used to be where they would have to sit and wait a year or something like that, but now they can transfer and play right away. And I would say that one of the aspects that I want to be transparent, like every HBCU athlete that went to at least Jackson State with Deion, They all are not. A lot of those guys weren't going to make it pro, and and a lot of those guys can't even transfer to a Power 5 school and probably make the team, unfortunately. So I think that the guys that people are talking about who Deion might have tricked or sold or sold out as far as because they went to Jackson State have to realize the ones who have the potential to play at the next level. I'm sure that they are either going to follow Deion to Colorado or they're going to have some other opportunities to go to other schools and show that they can play and be able to make it there. And I do think that another aspect that is important is that a lot of those kids that Deion coached at Jackson State who won't be able to play at those Power 5 schools, they have an experience for a lifetime that they'll never forget. Like they had a coach that was able to bring again, leveraging his brand. They know who Deion Sanders was, what he represent. He had celebrities come to HBCU games that were not doing that before he showed up at Jackson State. So it's important to understand that those kids that you all feel like got duped somehow, they are living with an experience that they'll never forget. And that's probably why you don't actually hear a lot of them coming out and speaking out and being like upset about this, because I'm sure that those guys are upset to some extent, but they are never going to speak ill about it because they understand, just like we should, life is a business, and these choices that each of us make, they're individuals' choices to make. They're not up to us to say, oh, this person owes us something. And that's something that we as a culture, we should understand by now. No one owes us anything. We are the people that kind of endure the most to get to where we need to get to. So I did want to touch on that. We're going to take a quick break here and we're going to tap back in with you guys momentarily. Welcome back, everybody. We had to pay some bills, so thank you for sticking with us. Yes, sir. So before we left, we was just kind of touching on the folks that felt like Deion had previously left the kids kind of in a bad position to not be able to, I guess, move forward with his move to Colorado, and that the kids that were supposed to come down there to Jackson State, how they felt, how they may be feeling. So we just wanted to kind of touch on that so you guys can understand that what the actual transfer portal looks like, and kind of just more or less just some aspects that you may not know. So Linda, did you want to kind of touch on like just the whole dichotomy between with the transfer portal and how the HBCU athletes or athletes in general can utilize it and just things of that nature?
Yeah, man. I think the number one thing when it comes to picking a university or picking a school, my opinion, you got to go somewhere where you, being the athlete, is going to get featured. Like I'm not going to go to a school where I know I'm not going to play or I'm not going to get opportunity to play. You know, I think a lot of kids get caught up in I want to go to the glitz and the glamour, or I want to go to Jackson State, or I want to go to Duke, I want to go to Brigham, I want to go, and then you end up on the bottom of the bench. You ask yourself why? Why? Because you were not prioritized by that head coach or by that coaching staff. So you can't force the situation. Now, in regards to Deion Sanders and this argument that he's leaving kids behind, I think is based in fallacy because number one, not every kid on that team is on a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And depending upon the amount of scholarships that Deion has when he goes to Jackson State, that's going to also determine who he can bring with him if they're prioritized by what he sees his vision as. And that's another thing about the business of college athletics that kids got to understand, that people in general have to understand, is that just because I sign a scholarship to go somewhere or I sign to go somewhere does not mean that the coach is obligated to play me. That's the idea. That's not always how it goes. We see plenty of freshmen on scholarship that get no playing time. Why? Because they're not better than who is in front of them. That's just the bottom line. Now, of course, you have some superstar freshmen or five-star freshmen that may get playing time right away. But in football, most kids are going to redshirt anyway, especially when they transfer, because it's a physical dominant sport, right? So this argument that Deion left kids behind is crap. Deion didn't leave no kids behind. Deion offered opportunity, and unfortunately, he left. Now those kids have an opportunity to either continue to go to Jackson State and support this HBCU thing that we've been crying about, or they have a transfer option to go into the transfer portal and go to another school that can feature them as the way that they may want to be featured. Because if we're being honest, and let's go with the logic that has been presented, right? The goal was for Deion to come to HBCUs and bring all these top level athletes to HBCUs, right? That means these top level athletes had a choice, probably had a top 5 of schools that are all offering the same thing, and they decided to go to Jackson State. Now he's not there. He has this kid probably has 4 or 5 other schools that he or she can choose from. I'm sorry, he can choose from and get a similar opportunity. So let's not put all the onus on Deion Sanders. There's a lot more intricacies that go into the process of even picking a school, getting a scholarship, signing a letter of intent, and also attending the school. There's things that go into that can be pointed to before you point blame on Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is simply doing what has always been done in college athletics. Coaches leave schools and go somewhere all the time. Prime example. What's his name? Coach Holloway that left St. Peter's to go to Seton Hall. Everyone clapped their hands. Yeah, bro. St. Peter's did good. You're going to Seton Hall. Congrats. Do your thing, bro. But he had kids that committed to him before they went on that run for Seton Hall. Are those kids not important? I think the kids are important, but the difference is that those kids, Coach Holloway is not being held responsible for the future of those kids. That's just the nature of the beast. Not everyone can go. That's just what sports is about. Not everyone can make it to the NBA or NFL. Not everyone can make it. Right? So we can't just bring a false mentality into college athletics and think that Deion Sanders is just doing this big egregious thing when he's not, in my opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate you, kind of touching on that again, man. I think it's just, this conversation, we don't want to, elongate it, but we think this is very important because, from our perspective, what we saw from a lot of ones just social media, for that lack of a better word, and even some people that we have communication with on the daily, was that, a lot of people genuinely felt that Deion Sanders let HBCUs down. And I think that is, as we kind of wrap up this episode, our point is that Deion Sanders did not let HBCUs down. He did something for HBCUs that can be replicated to an extent that might be through another personality such as Deion Sanders, or just through individuals like ourselves, for lack of a better word. Because an important aspect that I want to touch on as far as the final topic is, if we're going to talk about what Deion, him leaving HBCUs, does for HBCUs, it's up to us to point to ourselves and ask ourselves, what are we doing for HBCUs? And that's an honest question. And I think that somebody might say, well, I'm not Deion. I don't have a brand. I don't have millions. I don't have this. I don't have that. But that's not the question that you ask yourself in this moment, because HBCUs can use any and all support. And so, I think that that's a valuable question and point to be raised, asking yourself, what are you doing for HBCUs? And I'll let, Lenjo, I want to hear what you have to say about that. I mean, I know that's something you're passionate about, as far as some of the things that you've seen and heard just from your own athletic experience.
Yeah, man. I think you hit the nail on the head, man. We have to do a better job of asking ourselves, what can we do? What can I do to help HBCUs advance? Do I got to get involved in the Alumni Association? Do I got to get involved in the Booster Club? How can I impact, influence on, and make change? Of course, if everyone does a small piece, it can become a large piece. And doesn't necessarily have to be financial. Showing up the games, showing you support the games, going to these events that the HBCUs offer. Just, there are so many things that we can do to support HBCUs aside from just looking for money. And I granted, in my opinion, I think money is the most important thing here because that's what's going to make this shit go around. But there are a lot of things that we can do in support. And I think a lot of folks that are calling Deion a sellout or screaming for a support of HBCUs don't really support HBCUs the way that they say they do. And if you call them out on it, they'll give you an excuse as to why they don't support HBCUs the way that they say they do. Just the fact of the matter. You ask someone, when's the last time you've been to an HBCU game? Well, man, I'm working. I got it. When's the last time you watched one? Well, not on TV. Well, get ESPN Plus. You got Hulu, Netflix, get ESPN Plus. You can watch all kind of HBCU games. Then the excuses go into a big rabbit hole from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key here is like, are we doing enough to help HBCUs advance versus just putting it all on Deion? I think if we look ourselves in the mirror and see what can we do. And I don't mean for all HBCUs. What can you do for your current HBCU? You went to Howard, you went to Hampton, you went to UDC, you went to Bluefield State, Virginia State, whatever it is. What can you do for your individual HBCUs? And what can you do to help highlight HBCUs? There are plenty of pages and publications out there on Instagram, pages on Instagram that are highlighting HBCUs that get no support. One of our dear brothers, our frat brothers, his name is Gerald Higgins, I'm sorry. He has a page called Draft HBCU, right? Where he highlights some of the best football players in HBCU right now. If you go look on the page, you probably won't see, you probably won't have 5,000 followers. But what he's doing is amazing work to highlight HBCUs. How about we support him to then support everyone else? How about we support pages that are doing the work the right way? I think if we took on that onus and took on that responsibility seriously and took it seriously, then we could find change. Until we get to that point, it's going to be the same repetitive circle. We're going to be looking for a big name guy to come and help us. Or we're going to be complaining about money, complaining about this, complaining about that. When we can affect change ourselves, man. And I think that's one of the plights amongst Black people in general that we don't ever touch on. Of course things are definitely systemic. I'm not even going to debate that. It's systemic. It's proven to a degree. I'm just saying that aside from that, there are still things that we can do to improve ourselves.
Yeah, and that's 100% facts. I think that again, we owe it to ourselves to not be victims in this situation and to not blame the success of and the achievement of another person, in this case being Deion, and kind of putting ourselves in this situation. Deion's achievement is something that we should all applaud, because what it does show that if you have a level of success, and Deion, like you said, there's not a lot of HBCU coaches on the college level who get promoted, quote unquote, to go to a Power 5 school. It rarely, if never, happens. So again, we should be applauding Deion for taking that next step and opening that door. But again, I don't want to get into these contests, and I look forward to the dialogue. I don't really want to call it debate, because I do think that debate means that there's a winning and losing side. I think that, the arguments that we can share with each other could be educational. And that's what I hope, because I do think that we have to be careful in life in general, where we allow how we feel to overtake the logical situations and how we interpret those and how we deal with those. We obviously know that leading with emotion tends to put ourselves in precarious situations. I realize a lot of you all out there are passionate, but again, that passion has to be directed to kind of an end goal, because emotion is just in and of itself it's just everywhere. It's not directed towards anything. But when we're passionate about something, it's definitely leading to a direct outcome. And so let's channel those that are emotion into passion towards making HBCUs better. And again, not calling people that have helped. Deion is not the first Black man. He's not going to be the last Black man, Black coach to have done something positive for HBCUs. but let's really be careful about the language that we use, because calling a man like that, again, as we repeatedly say, a sellout, or someone who has fallen short when he's done so much to do, all because we may disagree with his decision to move on, is a quality that, if you really think about it, as Black folks, as we continue to grow and mature into different positions, if I know that my people will call me a sellout because I decide to better myself in a situation, why would I necessarily in the future think that if I have an opportunity to do what Deion did, that I would actually want to do it if I know I'm not going to stay, quote unquote, forever? Because I know if I do leave for a better opportunity for myself, that I will too be deemed a sellout. So you got to think about the ramifications of how, when we communicate these things, how they play onto other people's psyches as well, because that might deter other Black coaches, Hall of Fame players, whatever, whomever, from taking these opportunities, because it's like the opportunity that I did and how long I was there for is going to be scrutinized to say the mission is not complete. The mission is never going to be complete. This is not a race that has a timeline on it. All we can all do is just continue to pick up, and just like with anything else, pick up and let's continue to do the work at whatever level we can do the work at. And again, this conversation we look forward to having on our Instagram live. Date and time coming soon. Be on the lookout for that. And if there's not anything else, I'm gonna let you close it out, Lenjo. Whatever you have to say. But I'm done from my angle, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in. And Lenjo, close us out, man.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Brother Eris, that was amazing. I'm gonna leave it right there. But yes, y'all, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube, Instagram, and wherever else you stream your podcast. Subscribe. We are on all podcast services at TLAR _ podcast, the LA Report. Stay tuned for more content coming for season 3, and we look forward to seeing you all on Instagram Live. And with that, we say peace.
Peace.